Do you want to save money at the grocery store? Eat more organic, whole foods? Cultivate food security and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Casey Beck and Austin Blair of the documentary The Organic Life to talk about their experience with growing food and filmmaking. Casey is a director and producer of independent documentary films highlighting untold stories. She premiered The Organic Life to sold-out crowds at the 36th Mill Valley Film Festival in 2013. The film won Best Documentary Feature at the Santa Cruz Film Festival, and national and online broadcast distribution was rolled out in 2014, including iTunes, FoodMattersTVs, and PivotTV, among others. Casey is currently directing a feature documentary, This Just In, as well as digital short documentary series telling immigration stories through food called Table. Austin has been farming for 7 years. He got his start through the apprentice program at Soil-Born Farms in Sacramento, California in 2009. Soon after, he co-founded Lunita Farm in Sonoma Valley, a hand-scale mixed vegetable operation. In 2010, Austin began to work full-time at Paul's Produce, a mainstay in the Sonoma farming community for nearly 30 years. At home, he raises chickens and is launching a new hot sauce label. Welcome to the show today, Casey and Austin.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Greg.
Absolutely. I'm excited that you're here. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Well, we are from very different areas of the country. I'm from Syracuse, New York originally, and Casey's from
I'm from Florida.
South Florida. Wow. We met at school in Boston, and I did a biology degree, but didn't really, and was kind of into plants and had done landscaping and things like that, but didn't really have farming on my radar, to be honest. And Casey kind of knew from the get-go that she was really into filmmaking.
Yeah, by the time we met, I had already taken a couple filmmaking classes and was pretty sure that I, at least after we graduated, wanted to try it. Wasn't sure if I'd make it a career or not, but knew that's what I wanted to do. So I guess I'll keep going. Yeah. So I actually received a Fulbright to make a movie, a documentary film in Argentina.
Wow.
And so we went down there the year after we graduated. I kind of invited Austin along just because I said, well, I think it's pretty cheap to live down there and pretty beautiful, and you don't know what you want to do.
And there was a financial crisis going on here.
And so did you take him along as your Sherpa?
Yeah. More. He was actually what quickly became clear. He was more like my personal chef, really, which is a role that he has not shirked since then.
Nice. Yeah, I kind of came to to it from the angle of cooking and getting into food through kind of building a love of cooking that started for me in college. And then when we moved to Argentina, I'd never really lived in a big city before, and Buenos Aires is like a sort of
a mega city.
A mega city, like a New York-sized city. And, and we lived in a big high-rise apartment, and I had my butcher and my vegetable guy and my fish guy and my cheese guy,
pasta guy.
Yeah. And it was just a very cool experience, and I really got into food in a different way than I ever had before. And so Casey made her film, and then at the end of the time we were there, we took about a month and a half or so and traveled around the rest of the country, which included an experience woofing in Mendoza.
Ooh.
Which is kind of the wine-growing region, more or less due west of Buenos Aires against the Andes Mountains. And it's interesting because in many ways it's very similar to California, and especially where we're at. And we spent about a week on a very small family farm, really a subsistence family farm there.
Oh, wow.
And I think I've always been someone who's into, physical activity outdoors, and it was kind of just the first actual glimpse I'd had of what farming was all about. And they had about maybe 3 acres, about an acre of vegetables, and they had cows that they milked every day, and pigs, and 4 of the sows gave birth while we were there, and
they raised rabbits for meat.
They made their own prosciutto and stuff. It was very cool.
Really cool.
What year was that?
2009.
Oh my gosh.
2008.
Yeah, 2008.
Wow, that was just like last year practically.
I
know it's 2016, but that wasn't that long ago.
No, I'm definitely what you would consider a new farmer.
Wow. So you mentioned a term. I really want you to unpack it for our listeners, because a lot of them may not know what woofing is, except, maybe the dog.
Yeah. So I've heard it said 2 ways: willing workers on organic farms, or worldwide workers on organic farms. And either way, it's basically a program. There are some sort of regional groupings, but it's more or less country by country.
Right.
And it's kind of a way for mostly younger folks, early 20s kind of people, which is what we were at the time, to get an experience on a farm, and you essentially stay for free, and you get lodging and food in exchange for some amount of work.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And it's pretty well organized. You can just go online and type in woofing Argentina, and then most of the sites have a small fee to log in. And then once you're in, basically it lists like farm by farm what the farm is, how, what they grow, what kind of work they need. And then you just start a conversation. You contact them through the site, or they have their email on there. And then you tell them, here's who I am, here's what I'm looking to, how long I'm looking to be there. And what was really cool about this family in particular too was they didn't have the means to travel or to take their kids, I think, even within the country, but certainly they didn't have the means to take their children outside of the country. And so they actually saw woofing in part as a way to bring the world to their kids.
Oh, wow.
They had all of these travelers from all over the world coming and farming with them, and then, speaking different languages with their kids and telling them about their experience and what they do in their home country. And it was really cool to kind of have that bond, that interaction with the family in that way.
That sounds like a life-changing event for you and them.
It really was. Yeah, it really was. I mean, It was the event that kind of made me say, okay, I want to look into this further. And so when we came back from Argentina, Casey actually had another film project in the Dominican Republic in the following year, and then I moved to Sacramento and worked on a farm called Soilborn Farm.
Oh, wow.
Which is an urban farm, but is very cool. They have one farm that's in the city of Sacramento, and then a much, much larger farm just outside in a suburb called
Rancho Cordova.
What's it called? Rancho Cordova. And there I kind of got a real experience on a tractor scale farm, and kind of did a full season, and really got the bug and said, this is for me. And we had been planning on moving out to California at some point anyhow. And so Casey moved out to San Francisco, and then we lived there for a very short period of time before we kind of realized that we'd had our city experience.
I think once Austin got a taste of, being, that farm was 40 acres. I mean, 26.
Yeah,
it was a very large piece of property. Not that was all in production, but definitely tractor scale. And then, so the idea of kind of going back to something smaller, he said, well, if we can find somewhere close enough that you can still be connected to a metropolitan area to do film work, but I can farm, let's try to find that. And so Sonoma was pretty perfect for that. And so that was over 6 years ago that we moved to Sonoma.
Wow.
Yeah, beginning of 2010.
And Austin, when he first moved, started his own small farm, a hand scale, a half acre farm.
Put an ad in the paper that said young farmer looking for land, and a lady called. Yeah.
24 hours later.
A lady called me up 24 hours later, said, hey, I got some land. And
oh my gosh, I just got chills. Really?
Yeah.
That's how you got your first farm. That is epic.
I was trying to do it on Craigslist.
I was going to say the funniest thing was we had a lesson in how to live in a small town, because we put it on Craigslist because that's what we just thought to do. And someone said to us, "Oh no, you have to put it in the local paper. No one goes on Craigslist." So yeah, that's how it worked.
Yeah, and so I started doing that, and I ended up partnering with this other woman, this other farmer in town. And I think we quickly realized that it wasn't really enough land for both of us to be farming on and really make much of a go at it commercially. And then at the same time, same kind of small town happenstance, our landlord is my current boss's best friend.
Oh, right.
And so he said, oh, you should go work for my friend, Paul. And, we were used to living in places that weren't as friendly, shall we say, at that point, and it was a little bit jarring, but he
it actually worked out.
It worked out great, and that's where I've been ever since.
And then the story behind the organic life. So Austin started working for Paul, and meanwhile I was kind of in between film projects and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, what I wanted to start working on, and I actually went to a producer in LA who produces documentary films, and we got coffee and kind of pitched him a bunch of different ideas. I had all these ideas about, I wanted to go to Nepal and talk about Tibetan refugees. And then I thought, this was before all of the gold digging shows on Discovery. And I thought, oh, what about, gold diggers? And then I found out that Discovery was in the works to do that exact thing.
Right.
So I was rambling on to this poor producer for about 45 minutes with all of my different ideas. And he said, at the end of it, he kind of looked at me, and I could tell it wasn't going very well. And he said, you said you live in Sonoma, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, and your boyfriend's a farmer, right? And I said, yeah. And then he said, well, that's the best story that you've got. You should make a documentary about your boyfriend being a farmer.
Nice.
And I hadn't even thought about that as a potential story. And so it was really cool to get that outside perspective. So I called Austin after, and I said, Austin, I have good news and bad news. The good news is the producer gave me a really great idea for a documentary, and the bad news is it's about you.
How did you feel about that, Austin?
Not good, but it wasn't
Really?
It wasn't presented as a request. It was more of a, this is what's happening.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I definitely leveraged our relationship probably in an unfair way to get the story that I needed.
Well, you're laughing about it, Austin.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if you've seen the film, you'll see that I'm a bit of an unwilling participant, but Casey's a very good filmmaker. Yeah,
So
I was able to get the story.
Oh, that's really diplomatic.
Oh, there you go. So give us the name of the film.
So the film that I ended up making is called The Organic Life, and it's basically a year in our lives, and particularly in Austin's life as a young farmer in Sonoma, California.
Wow.
And so it kind of covers the first full year in 2011 that I worked with Paul, and he's been farming for a very long time. He comes from a farming family from Wisconsin, and then has been farming in Sonoma for almost 30 years now. And he's been on this particular piece of land where we're still farming for almost that whole 30 years. But this was actually the first year that he was kind of restarting a new business. And so there were a lot of ups and downs of just trying to get that going. But it was also just a lot of fairly steep learning curve for me. Yeah.
Cool. So, and that's where you're still working at now?
Yeah, exactly. And so it went really well, and we've been doing really well ever since. And so this will be my 6th full season with him.
Wow.
Yeah. So the film really does capture a moment in time, that all of the emotions, everything that was happening is very real and authentic. And we're very happy to look back on it now and be like, wow, that was really stressful and crazy, and we're glad things are better.
Yeah. So tell me about the inspiration behind the film. And I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, I think at the time, the only film that was out that was even in the subject of farming was Food Inc., which was a very important documentary. And of course, The Future of Food years before that. But really, there were these few kind of, landmark documentaries, but they weren't, to me, super personal. They interviewed farmers and they talked about, the importance of farming. But I think as a storyteller, the best way to tell a story is from a personal perspective, right? The way to make people care is to show them a person dealing with that issue.
Right.
That's kind of like storytelling 101.
Yeah.
So, living with a farmer at that point, and all of our friends were farmers, I felt that I just wanted to make a piece of media that really did their story justice. And that is to say, to present what farmers go through in a real and honest way. And it's not that it's all bad, and it's not that it's all good, like any job, like any profession. It's it's life. It's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So the film is really intimate. Someone just told me, they said, "Oh, I really liked how much time we spent in your house." And I was like, yeah, you do see a lot of our kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's really real in that sense. And I wanted to, because I had access to this great farmer, I committed to being out there for a year. My original idea was I'll go out at least once a week for a year. I think I probably averaged about that. There were a couple weeks I went out multiple times, and a couple weeks I didn't go out at all. But it just to show the speed of life on a farm, the speed of kind of these cycles and processes that are lost to all but a few of us. And I know that because I'm in the filmmaking world, which is a very fast-paced, the media world.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's very instant right now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice to check in and to offer an audience a look at this historic lifestyle that's still being carried through today and has just kind of evolved to meet modern demands.
Yeah. Yeah. Austin, thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was very interesting as a participant, because in one way it was cool to be able to spend time with Casey, because a lot of the problem that you see in the film is us trying to kind of get used to this lifestyle where maybe I have a lot more time to hang out in the winter, but in the summer, pretty busy,
nothing.
Pretty tired, and going to bed early and getting up early, and so I think showing that and showing the development of our relationship through that, I thought was pretty cool. And I think since we've talked to our farm friends and then showed the film in other farming communities since, we've really gotten a warm reception from other farmers, because I think they really saw it and said, yeah, I can relate to that. I can see that. And
Austin did sign off on everything that's in there. I gave him editorial oversight. And,
nice.
Yeah, and so there were, he's basically said, yes, this is accurate. I that's what happened. And there were a couple scenes, like really, if I'm being honest, a little nitpicky about some of the scenes. For example, I showed my editor and I had cut seedlings of eggplant.
Yeah,
it was
seedlings
eggplant.
Of eggplant,
and
but
then
you were
my
saying
next
tomato.
Shot, and I was saying tomato. And so Austin said, no. You have to, if you want to show this to farmers, you have to show a tomato seedling when you say tomatoes.
Yeah.
They will know that this is, made by non-farmers. So there were a couple incidences like that where I was like, Okay, if those are your only problems, then I guess it's okay.
I was going to say they're doing great.
Yeah.
I can vouch for the agricultural accuracy of the film.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and that's what you're there for, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So I want to know some high points and low points, if you're willing to share them. What was a high point for you in this process?
I think there were several high points. I think finishing the actual filming was probably a high point, and realizing, oh, we have a good product here.
Yeah.
I think there's been a number of times for me seeing the film and presenting it to people, whether it's in film festivals or individual screenings. Each of those have really been high points for me, to be able to kind of use the film as a way to talk to other people about farming and about the importance of sustainable agriculture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really, what's been really cool is a lot. I mean, every time we present the film, or every time the film comes up, I hear how our farmers, well, if only they would do more, and if they could, get out and advocate for themselves and educate the public. And I really, I empathize with the farmers, because there are very few other professions where not only you're expected to do your profession and do it well, but then you have to do a totally different profession, which is educate people on top of that. And so it's been really cool when that comes up to be able to say, well, that's why I made the film. So that's kind of my part, and my role in this is that I can, I've made something that farmers, most of the farmers, if not all, have said, yeah, this is what it's like, to really explain to a general audience what it is like, and to, maybe add some value to what farmers are doing, or perceived value, where it might not otherwise be there. Because, I think once you see it, it's hard to argue with what they're asking for these vegetables. It still feels too low, honestly, after you see them bend over and plant, plant by plant for 500 feet. It's like, how am I complaining about this being $3 a pound? So
it gives us a whole new appreciation for the value of real food, don't you think?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I think that was one of my goals, and that was one of the inspirations behind the film, is seeing Austin and other farmers just kind of frustrated with some of the reaction to organics. And I think this is slowly changing, and especially as more farmers markets are accepting EBT, and more people realize there are other ways to get fresh food at a lower cost, and that might be through a CSA or through buying in bulk. But especially when we were making the film, there was still a little bit of iciness around, coldness around organic, and the idea of like, well, I would love to buy organic, but it's so expensive. Yeah. And so it was kind of like, well, this is why. And, is it really expensive when you think about all that's gone into it, and all the thought and care for the earth, for the farm as a system that is not seen in other food products?
I like the thought that you can either pay for it now by what you put in and what you eat, or you can pay for it later in your medical bills. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the idea of food as medicine is as old as man, really. Yeah. And I think I think what's been really cool for us is, Casey shot the film in 2011, and as she just said, I mean, the attitude has really changed in the past 5 years. I mean, there's podcasts like yours out there now, and the number of books and movies, and just I don't know, it's just in the zeitgeist now in a way that it was.
It's been really heartening to kind of witness that change, and maybe even play a small part. And I was going to say, I think one of the best ways that people can actually learn to value organic, local, seasonal produce is by growing their own.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think once you start trying to grow it, and you realize like, oh, this is really quite difficult. There's some things that are super easy and really fun. And then when you actually start to get a series of raised beds, or whatever your situation is, that's when you start to realize, wow, there's a lot that goes into this. And that's not to say you can't do it at home, but I think it's kind of cool to have both, try it at home, and then I think you will, without a doubt, certainly value your local farmers more.
Isn't that the case? Very well said. Very well said.
As far as a low point, I mean, Of course, on my end, there's the financial stress of raising money for a feature film, feature independent documentary at that, which is always difficult. But it was really an interesting experience to see our town kind of rally around the film. And I had a couple different really successful fundraisers over 2 years, which I think kind of gave me not only the financial support, but also the emotional support to keep going.
Yeah.
So just that experience, but then, even coming up short at the end and having to ask a few friends basically to invest in the film and to say, look, I know that people want to see this. I know that there's an audience out there. Will you invest? And was really fortunate that a couple close people stepped up and said, yeah, we'll do that. I also think about there's one scene in the film where Austin and I, it's in the heat of the summer, and we're kind of replaying this argument that we had in real life, and we were talking about it again, and that's when it was recorded. But the first time I had this thought of, oh my gosh, I need to film this. And then I immediately followed that up with a thought of, what are you thinking? Don't be a terrible person. You can't film this. So I didn't film the first one. And so then I kind of said, can we talk about that again? I know it's still a little touchy, but I think it's really important for the film. So that was a little bit of a speed bump that we had to get over. And then we had to have a third conversation, not on camera, to be like, we're cool, right? Like everything's good. So that was a real process. But I think that emotion is really captured in that moment as well.
Yeah, and there's some others, like there's a scene that didn't make the film of showing me riding my bike to the farm, because we live on the farm. And I was like, man, it's like I have to ride my bike to the farm. You can't just give me a ride today. You have to video me doing it.
I had our neighbor driving the car, and I'm feeling out the window and like talking to Austin, and he's like, what are you doing? This is insane. Like, just give me a ride. So, yeah, there were some moments where our relationship kind of confronted confronted the filmmaking process.
Oh yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. And it's cool that you put that in, because that's real life.
Yeah, and that was really important to me. It was, again, just going back to why I made the film. I didn't want to sugarcoat it. I didn't want it to look perfect. I didn't want to cut out all of the camera shake and the cuts and because I wanted to show people what it's like. Yeah. And so that's part of it.
Nice. Well done. That was an epic project, and I'm really proud of both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to shift a little bit on you here, and I'm going to ask you about a time you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what have you learned from it?
Well, I think the most obvious one for me is when I tried to start my own small farm coming here. So after I left Sacramento and basically made my way to Sonoma, I thought, oh, okay, I've learned all this stuff. I'm ready to go. Like, I know how to farm now, and got into it, and very quickly realized that I did not have nearly the skills that I either needed or wanted to get to kind of the level I wanted to get to. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that we hadn't stayed in Sacramento was that I'd kind of been looking for a mentor or working with a more experienced farmer who'd really kind of had a successful business that I could work in his system or her system and really learn that way. That was something that really appealed to me, and I feel like I kind of just lucked out working with Paul. And it was, I think in some ways it was necessary for me to kind of start my own small farm and fail, for him to be able to kind of see, okay, like, he's serious, he's really trying, he's trying to do this, he's doing something here.
But he clearly needs some help.
He clearly needs some skills that he doesn't quite have yet. And so, I mean, it was really a great personal growth experience for me, and in a lot of ways.
So I think another element of that as well that Austin isn't mentioning is that the first thing he did for Paul when he was still working on his own farm was actually drive the delivery truck. And I think it also, I think we've lost, at times there's this, like our entrepreneurial spirit, and I'm speaking of the royal we, has grown to the point where it's like, it's hard for us to humble ourselves and take those foot in the door jobs. And so I think it was really honorable of Austin to say, okay, here, I want to work with this guy. There's not the position that I want, which is to farm with him right now, but there's a delivery driver, position, and now I can talk to all the chefs and meet all the chefs. And I think it's to kind of look at the silver lining of what opportunities are there. And then I think most managers and business owners, if you prove yourself to them, are willing to give you more opportunity. And so I think when Paul saw, like, okay, this guy started his own farm, is now willing to drive a truck around for me, like, let's see where his farming chops are, and actually get him out in the field and working.
Yeah, and it was cool that same year. So that was summer of 2010. And then I started working farmers markets for them.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then by the end of the summer, by tomato season, which for us it really doesn't start in a big way until August, then I started picking tomatoes. And then by the end of the summer, I was working more or less half time there. But it was a great experience in kind of doing things little by little and kind of showing that I could hang with the crew, even though I was definitely the slowest guy out there. But, little by little, just getting my skills up.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you consider your biggest success?
I think for me, probably just sticking with it. I feel like, there's been a number of times where I've thought about going off and trying to do my own kind of farm, or building on the things I learned, and then trying to take them somewhere else. But I think for me, being able to just stick with it and really learn the things I need to learn, season in and season out, has made me a much better farmer. And I really feel like I'm just kind of in a really solid position now to keep doing that, to keep learning, to keep building my skills. We'll see. I'm only six years in, really, but
wow. How about you, Casey?
I think, kind of coming out of some of the fundraising struggles, one of the things I didn't mention was that I think I applied. I didn't keep track, but it was definitely nearing 20 grants.
Wow.
I mean, I just applied over and over and over and just got rejected and rejected and rejected. I mean, to grants where I was like, I'm certain I will get this. Like, there's no better fit. There can't be. And then you get the form letter. Thank you for applying.
Yeah.
And so realizing that my support system was my community, asking for money from the community, for them to believe in this project. And then from there, getting to a place where, it had national distribution. It was on PivotTV in the summer of 2014. Wow. And I just remember going to the TV guide and seeing the organic life coming on at 4 p.m. or whatever. And, kind of just standing there awestruck. Oh, it's almost unbelievable. But then, your eyes are seeing it. And so that was really, really powerful to realize, like, this tiny little film. I mean, I call it professional home movies. It's really like not your, high production quality lit this and that, interviewing all the experts. No, it's just Austin and me in our kitchen, and to have that, and then to have it go to a national audience was very powerful. Yeah, it was epic.
Yeah. Well, congratulations once again. That is that's incredible. I'm so proud of you both.
Thank you so much.
So what drives you?
For me, I guess it's just a passion for delicious food. And I feel like one of the things I like the physical work with my body. I like being outdoors all the time. I like kind of the team aspect of farming, but I also like that it has a lot of individual aspects as well that allow for a lot of, I don't know, just personal, in your head kind of time.
That is the case.
Contemplative time. Yeah. And so in some ways, I mean, we do a lot of yoga, and in some ways, farming is very much like a moving meditation at times.
Amen.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those, and maybe there's a lot of other jobs like this, but for me, it has so many different levels of satisfaction. Like a single day, I can feel like, wow, we really got a lot done today, and everything just clicked. Mm-hmm. Or we could have a really big sale, and that feels really good. Yeah. Or folks come back from a farmer's market and they've sold out everything, and that feels great. Or it could just be eating. We had the first cherry tomato of the year last week.
Oh my God, yes.
And that kind of thing is just so great, and being able to just snack right in the field is just awesome for me.
Yeah. So Casey, what drives you?
I mean, I think it sounds so cliche, but in thinking about that question, for me, it's just that there's so much beauty in the earth. There's so much that I see and hear that's just really incredible. And to be able to capture that and then edit it and work with it and kind of massage the story into it or out of it or around it, whatever it might be, to be able to present it to other people. It's just something that I'm drawn to. I really am like, it's almost like making life digestible for other people. And I think also challenging the singular narrative that's out there, when you, especially with something that was so personal, when I realized, oh, this is what's out there, what people believe, because what the news media and the mainstream media is saying, what they believe isn't the whole truth. That really drives me to kind of add something else. And I think about it, it was personal for me. And I think that there are so many other stories like that, and so many other filmmakers and media makers, producers out there who have similar situations, right? Where this singular narrative, whatever it might be, doesn't represent their reality. Mm-hmm. So to be able to take part of that process, I guess I'm, always like to challenge authority a little bit in whatever form it might be. And then to be able to do it in a beautiful way, there's nothing better.
Yeah. Very beautiful. The way you said that. Very, very beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah.
So I'm all about education, and I have to know, is there one book that has been influential for you guys in this process?
I would say I'm really the only one who does farm-based reading. But for me, certainly Elliot Coleman's New Organic Grower.
Oh, yes.
Was a book that I read at Soilborn when I worked there. And we also read the John Jevons book, How to Grow More Vegetables.
Oh, yes.
And so it was cool because in those two books, both focus on much smaller farm scale than I'm used to now. Mm-hmm. But they provided ways of learning and thinking about soil building and cover cropping and crop rotation and all the important aspects of farming that are just as applicable on a tractor scale in the way that I'm working now. And so I think those are books that are they're both very, very important, sort of as the canon of farming books, but also particularly the How to Grow More Vegetable ones is very prescriptive. I mean, it really has a lot of information if you want to know spacing details and the kind of stuff that, I mean, you can get that from the Johnny's catalog sometimes. The Johnny's seed catalog out of Maine is that kind of info, but otherwise that kind of info can be difficult to come by.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was a tremendous resource for me, especially trying to start my own farm.
Casey?
I mean, I am a visual person, so I just think of, every movie that I've seen that, informs my work in one way or another, whether it's, the latest Inarritu film and looking at these single shots of, traipsing through whatever set he's in or whatever scene and just thinking like, oh, I could shoot a documentary like that. How do I do that?
Yeah.
Or a Swedish art film that just lets scenes really hang in this beautiful and powerful way that, so often we have all these really short cuts. So I like all of these films come to mind, but I'm
Beautiful.
much more of a film person.
Yeah.
I mean, when I read it's novels and stories,
Yeah.
and I'm the storyteller of the two of us.
Nice. Nice.
Austin's the logical planner, and I'm the whimsical, like, oh, what fun can I think up.
I actually there's another book that I just thought of that is a much older book called 5 Acres and Independence.
I know. I was surprised you didn't say that one at first.
This is a very cool book. I can't remember when it's from. It's got to be the 30s or 40s or something. But it very much takes this very old school idea of the family farm, where you can kind of have everything within the farm, and it tells you how to build the root cellar and the barn and all this type of stuff. And that book to me felt like a way of explaining how to do in the United States, basically what this family in Argentina that we saw.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And it has some applicability for what I'm doing today, but I think, if we were ever to own our own land and create our own farm someday, that would definitely be the model I would look to.
Called 5 Acres of Independence?
5 Acres and Independence.
And Independence. Very beautiful. So what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
I would say my one piece of advice, I've thought about this listening to your show a bunch, is go out and try to plant something yourself. And I know that that's kind of your mantra too. And I think it's just really important to reiterate, because even though I'm sort of a production scale, commercial farmer in a way, compared to most farms in the United States, we're still very, very small. And I think that on pretty much any scale of farming, I was just talking to my friends who live in Seattle who just bought a house and just planted their first garden at their house.
Nice.
And seeing the kind of joy that brings someone. And they're emailing me with all the,
exactly.
Here, what kind of orientation should I have the beds in, and all this kind of stuff, how to do the irrigation. And I think there's so much joy and kind of self-satisfaction that can come from growing any type of food and eating it.
Yeah.
I've even got my parents who love to garden and love to be outside, but never really did much in the way of vegetable gardening. Now they grow beans and
they're
save
running
seed.
experiments for us about
nice.
our timing and
and growing tomatoes and stuff. So I'd say just go out and plant something.
Cool.
And I think I would say to find your passion and then follow your passion, and then also to be realistic about your passion. And that's something that I actually learned from Austin being out on the farm. I mean, Austin is one of the most passionate people I know. He loves what he does. He could honestly talk to you about farming for 5 hours, especially if you give him a beer, he'll just go off. So, and yet he's very realistic that just because he loves what he does doesn't mean that he's not going to be a little miserable on a 105-degree day, or that getting up at 5 a.m. is not going to be a little uncomfortable, for 4 months at a time. And so I think that's something that I really absorbed and kind of witnessed, is that, it's okay to admit when it's work and when it's maybe not the most fun. And that doesn't negate the fact that you love it and it's your passion. Yeah. And so we have this idea of passion as being, this intense, burning, happy joy. And it is that. And at the same time, it's also hours of work or boredom or discomfort, just like anything is. But I think it's that the highs start to kind of outweigh the other parts.
Most of the time I call mine a gift because I've been at this for 41 years. The rest of the time I call it a curse.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's okay to be both.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Casey and Austin. It has been a treat getting to chat with you and getting to know you.
Yeah,
thanks so much,
Greg.
We really appreciate it. And we're really excited to be on the show.
Yay. So 2 more quick questions for you. What projects are you currently working on that you might want to share about?
So I'm actually working on a couple different projects. I think one that's probably most interesting for your listeners is I'm working on developing a series of short documentaries with a group of filmmakers. We're calling it Table, and it basically will be immigration stories told through food, which is really cool. So we're working on our pilot right now. One of our producers' dads, he's a first generation Chinese immigrant, and every Sunday he cooks the most incredible Chinese feast. I mean, like, you think about your biggest Thanksgiving that you've ever been at. It's that and maybe times two.
Wow.
He cooks for 20 to 40 family members.
Oh my gosh.
5 different meats, 10 different vegetable dinner dishes. Everyone's cooking, and it's basically his way of bringing his family together and keeping his culture alive. So that's just our first episode, which we're really excited about. And we're going to have 8 to 10 different immigration stories where we're just going to celebrate food and celebrate the different cultures that make up American culture, and, you know, tell these great stories and hear these great stories from many different parts of the population that maybe aren't always covered or aren't always highlighted in the media.
I want to make sure that when you get that close to being done, you email me back so we can have a conversation about that.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to.
Yeah. Austin?
Yes.
I guess I've been, this is probably something that you guys do a lot in Arizona, but I've been working on growing chilies a lot here over the last few years, and I've gotten into hot sauce making, and I'm getting to the point of maybe trying to do a little bit of a side project, selling hot sauce and doing some different chili powders and stuff like that with some heirloom chilies that I'm growing. So
nice.
Yeah, working on that and still trying to develop the corn that you see in the movie. Still trying to make a proper tortilla at home.
Nice.
We've got sopes down.
We got sopes. I make a real good sope, but the right consistency for tortilla still escapes me.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We need to spend more time in Mexico, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. So how can our listeners get a hold of you?
So you can find out more information about the film and kind of about Austin and me on the website for The Organic Life, which is www.theorganiclifemovie.com. And you can contact us through the website, or you can email us directly, info@theorganiclifemovie.com. And we're very used to fielding myriad farming questions now, and I do try to answer every email that comes through. I just had a conversation the other day with a woman about her chickens and ended up talking to our friend who grows chickens and raises chickens. And so if we don't know the answer, we'll try to help you find it and support, you know, your listeners' farm, each and every one of their farming journeys.
Beautiful. Thank you again. And that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Do you want to save money at the grocery store, eat more organic, whole foods, cultivate food security, and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.